So if you're like me, you've probably been looking into handheld PCs. So for the most part, it was something I never really dealt with. I have a PC, I had a Switch, now I have a Switch 2, so it wasn't really anything that was interesting to me. But then I got a wife. So basically, she doesn't really want me to be gaming all day, and she wants to hang out all the time and do stuff, which I personally agree with. So I decided, well, if I'm at work or, out and about, I might as well try to game during that time. So when I was playing the Switch, I was like, well, it'd be nice if I could play through some of the games on my PC and on my Steam account that just were left to collect dust. There was one thing that I couldn't find. I wanted to see a video that was comparing the Lenovo Legion Go S, specifically the Steam edition, so I could see Steam OS on a non-Steam Deck device, and the Rog Ally X. That's where we are now. So if you're interested in seeing a comparison between these two devices, here we go. All right, so one thing to keep in mind is the budget. These devices are rather pricey. And not that we're going to talk about it really much, but with the ongoing tariff situation, everything's going to be slightly more expensive. So keep that in mind. So currently the ROG Ally X is going for about $899 or about like $900. The Legion Go S Z1, which is the version I got, has 32 gigabytes of RAM and terabyte of storage. That's actually a little cheaper, like $829. And you're gonna have the, more entry-friendly versions, which are still gonna be more than like say Switch 2 or PS5. And those are gonna be around like $599. And that's gonna include your like Legion Go with your Z2 Go, which even though it shows Z2 and you're like, okay, that's going to be better than the Z1 Extreme, it's actually slightly lower performance by a decent amount. And it comes with 24 or 16 gigs of RAM depending on the device. Whereas the Z1 Extreme version for the ROG Ally X is 24, and the Z1 Extreme for the Lenovo Legion Go S is going to be 32 gigabytes of RAM. So if you want to wait for the Z2 Extreme, which is the newer version, like I said, that's going to be around 6 months from now. But that's going to come with most likely over $1,000 to $1,200, maybe even more. So if you're looking for anything in particular in this video, everything's going to be timestamped down in the description below. So feel free to just go through and get what you need. Once you do have the budget in mind, you got to decide, what do you want out of this device? Not everything you want to do is going to run well on these devices. So if you want to run every single game you ever want to try to play, you're going to have to stick with a PC or a console experience. So if you got something like the ROG Ally X, that is going to be a handheld PC with Windows 11. So it's going to have all the functionality of a Windows type device. You're going to have all the stuff from Steam, EA, Xbox, Pass, Game Pass, whatever you want from that. But you're also going to have the functionality of an actual computer. Those specs are going to be different than a, desktop, of course. You're going to have to go game to game, see which ones you want to use, or any other types of functionality, whether it be adding ROMs or anything like that. Or if you want to go with something like your Steam OS, it's going to have that built-in functionality for Steam. You're going to get into your games faster, but you're going to have some limitations with the Windows side of things. But it does have desktop mode still. So you're not losing out too much from that. You can still add your ROMs and do everything. But that user friendliness, and whether you want the UI of one or the other, it's going to be something we're going to go over today as well. So you have to keep in mind what you're looking for. Do you want more of a PC experience on the go, or do you want to play games? Because that's going to make a difference on which device you're going to go for. With the Lenovo Legion Go S Z1 Extreme version for the Steam OS and with the ROG Ally X, they're very similar when it comes to breakdown of the visuals, which we'll go over. And when it comes to the UI, yes, one has SteamOS and one has Windows. But keep in mind, both of them have the ability to change how they're used. Like when it comes to games, some of them are going to run better or worse than others. With something like the Rog Ally X, you can change a lot of features and functions to get it to run the way you want to. If you don't do it out of the box, some things are going to run worse. Where it's like SteamOS, it does have that built-in functionality Steam has, works out of the box or doesn't. And you can see those games as you go into it. So if a game says not on deck, like it does on the Steam Deck, which basically just means, it's ready to go or not, that type of thing is going to make a difference. So if you're wanting to tinker a little bit, play around with settings, go in and change things, Rog Ally X is going to make a difference. But if you're wanting SteamOS, keep in mind, SteamOS is now open source. It can be put on any device. So even with something like the Lenovo Legion Go S, there's two versions, which is that Windows version and that SteamOS version. You can put SteamOS on the Windows version, but it doesn't really make a difference anymore. So if you're wanting something like the SteamOS version, go for that because it's cheaper for the Lenovo. But if you want that Windows experience, it will cost a little bit more for the same specs. So keep that in mind as well.
First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and power up each device. And what we're going to do is try to power them up at the same time. That way we can get a comparison how long it takes to run them up and get them in a game. So both of them are starting up. One has the Zeus logo, one with the Legion logo. So this one's already powered up. Log in with that. We got my custom one here. And I'm loading up a game. This one I gotta first open up Steam. So if you're looking to get straight into gaming, this one is going to be better. I do have the display up here for information, which you can use on here as well. So I'm waiting for network. And if you're wanting to do Windows specific things, you're going to get into that quicker, but that's not what we're trying to do here. So and obviously, I'm trying to open up two games on the same Steam. That's going to have problems. So what we can see is basically we're in a game. The load times are going to be dependent on how fast you're doing things, of course. But there's also the aspect of one is going to pop you straight into the game and into Steam, and the other one you're going to have to choose which one you're going to go into. So alright, so now that we're looking at both of these, let's look at something else. So we got our menu here for Steam, and then we have our Asus Armory crate. So this is going to be your configure mode. You're going to be able to change a bunch of settings here. This is like your command center, which is more blown out over here. And you can edit it to add and change. You're going to be able to change your FPS limiter, monitor, which is, what we were using over here on the top. It has its own stuff. You change your, whether you want it to be 1080p or higher, 60 frames or higher. You can change a lot of settings directly from Armory Crate, but you also will have this command center pop up where you can change your brightness, your performance mode, whether you have the information kind of like we had on the other thing. This will change your wattage. So turbo mode is your 25 watt mode. You got your 13 watt silent mode. And then of course you have like I said, your 17 watt operating mode, which is what I keep it in typically. And over here on this device, you're going to have your settings over here which you're going to be able to change your overlay information, your frame limit VRR, which this screen has. Allow tearing, which changes like the smoothness, shading, TDP limit, manual GPU clock, which goes up to 2700 millihertz, and your scaling for like the screen. So overall, you're going to have a lot less options to start from here. So, and over here, you're going to have different settings that you can play around with in your menus. So you can add Bluetooth devices such as like a Bluetooth mouse, and you got keyboard, which you can change your themes of. Steam has this cool thing where not only can I change my intro video, but I can choose from a few different layouts of different keyboards that I want to use, which is going to look like this because I have the seafoam version. So it's a matter of the UI. Is we're going to have our menu buttons, our information, expanded options button. On here, you're going to have your system button and your Steam button. So, same thing over here is you're going to have a similar thing. Your option button is going to be on the top instead of the bottom. So these buttons are just switched actively. And then these buttons are also flipped. So they're very similar layouts. It's literally just flipped. And the D-pads, there's an extra notch in the middle between the ones here. But this one's going to have a softer hit. So like I said, the joysticks, this one's going to be a thicker texture with a concave. I prefer more. This one has lines here, but they're not lit up. They do light up though. You have your colored buttons compared to your standard, non-colored buttons here. You have a touchpad in case you have a use for that, but like I said, you're probably going to be wanting to use a wireless keyboard or mouse. And also, they both work with any sort of handheld PC dock, which I will say this one had significantly more delay in-game when I was trying to use the dock, but that could also, like I said, be a part of your settings. So, going over the ergonomics a little more, on this one, we have a little bit sharper edges here, which I think fits nice for certain palm sizes, but for most it's going to like push into your palm a little more sharply, so I'm not a big fan of right here in particular. You have your nice exhaust port here, and your exhaust ports here. It can get a little loud, but I find that it's not quite as loud in bass middle mode as the Lenovo version. So on the back here, this is actually where I have my biggest complaint in the ergonomics is these buttons here. They're a lot more concave. They're like they protrude more right here. And when you go to hit the buttons, when you're holding the controller, you don't naturally touch there. You have to reach, extend, hit those buttons. They're awkward, if anything. So I would say, for the most part, you're not going to be as happy with these buttons as on the Lenovo, which we'll go over in a second. So on the top, you're going to have your textured LT, LB, RT, and RB buttons, your two USB-C power ports, your volume up and down, which I do prefer these volume up and down buttons on the ROG, your micro SD card, your headphone jack, and your power button, which has your fingerprint sensor. And on the Lenovo, you're like we've said before, you are going to have your LT, LB, RT, and RB buttons here. The only difference is all this is moved over to the middle, so your two power cords for different outputs or power and another accessory. You have a big exhaust port here, which gets quite strong wind and power through those fans in the radiator. So you have your headphone jack, your minus and plus buttons, which I said I don't prefer as much. Your power button, which is kind of small. I'd rather that be a little bigger. Doesn't have that fingerprint sensor there. So, but my biggest plus on the Lenovo when it comes to the back is you got this nice big exhaust here. You have these hair trigger extensions so that if I want to, press in much quicker compared to without. They're smooth, and then they're nice and quick. But my biggest plus on this in the back, the fact that these buttons are flush with the device. They sit directly where your finger's going to be. So when you go to press that, it's nice and simple. Nice and clicky too. So other than that, obviously we have our screen differences. The screen on the Rog Ally is 7 inches compared to the 8 inches with our VRR. Very similar displays overall, but I will say that for most people, the convenience of the slightly larger screen is going to outweigh the differences when it comes to the weight differences, which are both like less than 2 pounds. So for the most part, for me, I don't even care about the weight and size difference, but you can already hear that strong fan going when we're not even in a game. It just kind of goes sometimes. So this is, just basically my laptop converted over to here. We just have a PC. You can go internet, do whatever you want from there. Whereas this version does have the option for a desktop mode as well. So you're going to click, go into power, go to switch to desktop. And it's not going to like bring all your desktop stuff over, and it's not meant to use this as often as like on the Rog Ally. But, it's literally just going to be the same thing. Is you have to hit certain buttons to be able to click in. So if I want to click here, the only difference is like, say, since this one's built and just is Windows 11, I click it, keyboard's up. Here, I have to press X to bring up the keyboard, and then, go from there. So just certain things to keep in mind, when you're going through and learning the UIs. There are certain little quirks and differences that you're going to have to get used to.
What I'm going to go over now is specifically for like the dock mode. So if you're not aware, just like a Switch or Switch 2, the PC handhelds do have the option to be docked. So I'm using the JSOC stuff. Right now, what that means is that I have an Ethernet port which I can use to run things and download games and stuff faster. Which, if you want to just go ahead and download your games using your dock and then switch to handheld for your actual gaming experience, that's fine. But this also has the option to use the games at a 4K resolution on your, if you have a 4K TV, 60 frames per second. So yes, the handheld does have the version for 120, refresh rate. But if I'm trying to run the game at 4K, it's gonna probably not work really well. So these are usually best at like a medium type setting, 60 frames per second, and that's gonna be great on your battery life. Where if I'm using higher setting for 120 hertz, I'm getting an hour out of these devices. But one positive of the dock is that I have built-in USB ports, HDMI to connect to your television, so I can put, like, say, a wired keyboard and mouse attached to it, play games, or I can charge other devices if I have the 100-watt charging supply, because if the device is only using 65 watts, I still have like 45 watts to work with for charging other devices. So it can be really good if you want to have that experience of having like a PC if you don't have one already like I do, or if you want to say like go into a living room and play games with family or friends, or show off a game at a buddy's house and go over theirs and hook it up to their game. I chose to show off the docked version of the Lenovo Legion Go S in particular because I felt it actually ran better than the Rog Ally in certain game situations. Like I played Lies of P, if you're familiar with that. You want the frame rate to be good for pairing those types of situations, which I found on the Rog I had like 3 or 4 seconds of lag, whereas on the Lenovo I was able to pair it consistently. So that's something that matters to you, or you're playing like, timing specific type of games. That's going to be important. We're just going to go into a game. I'm going to show it off so you can see visuals. So yes, it's still running off of the handheld. The visuals are going to be able to be upscaled to 4K 60 frames per second, which I don't have those settings for this. And one thing to note when you are using a dock, it's going to be different depending on whether you are on the Ally X or the Lenovo, is that when you first start up, the sound is going to have to be changed. So one thing to keep in mind is that when you switch to the device, you need to switch to the different audio, like whether you're doing it on the Rog Ally, which if you're wired into the controller, you have to actually switch the audio from the controller. And then for my purposes, I actually need to switch my speakers to Bluetooth, and then pair it to my Bluetooth speakers separately, like this. So it's going to be a matter of you're going to have to make sure to do that, or you're not going to have audio. So like I said, when I'm running it from a computer, the game's going to run better and potentially have higher fidelity in the visuals. But we're playing a pretty high fidelity type of game on a handheld PC docked to a TV, which, I would say is pretty nice, because if I'm on the go and I just bring a tiny dock, because this dock is only like this big with like some ports in the back, so fidelity wise, they're pretty good. Everything's running really smoothly. Screw you in particular. Let's go over here, look at this fire. A lot of times you can see game's fidelity and how the fire looks. One thing I want to make a point to say is that with these types of devices, we've gone over stuff like the battery life, because, they're going to last maybe an hour or two. They're not going to be for all day type of gaming. They're going to be like when you're on break at work or when you're doing something on the go. They're not meant to just be at the computer playing all day, but you can just plug them in. They work just fine all day for that. When it comes to things to keep in mind is that, yes, they're still handheld devices. Even normal computers have processing issues sometimes, or glitches, or things that happen while you're using them. That's to be expected, and it's kind of exacerbated on this type of scale. So you're going to have things like, one time I was using the Rog Ally X. All the audio just stopped working. Nothing I did could fix it. I restarted it. Everything was fine. Or like the Lenovo, certain things just, froze up for a while. There are things to keep in mind that you're going to have to work with or figure out, little small quirks and things. But for the most part, they're excellent devices. Both run great. Both have everything that you want from these types of devices. Yes, the battery life could be better. Yes, the performance could be better. And those are gonna come with time. So, and like I've said other points in this video, there are gonna be newer iterations in the future. That's just what happens with technology. No matter what you're doing, no matter what type of device you go for, eventually there's gonna be a better device. So if you're gonna have buyer's remorse, wait for that next device, whether it be 6 months from now or for the next one. But just keep in mind, that's going to come with a price tag. So if you want to wait, say, 6 months for those newer devices, and then get one of these two devices, there's going to potentially be a drop in that. But don't always count on it, especially nowadays. But, if you go in and you're expecting it to work 100% every time and not have any issue, you could have some disappointment. But I still think they're fantastic devices. Everything that I used it for, when I go to work, I just open up a game, play it for a few minutes. Doing something like, say, like Mario Odyssey was built around popping in, grabbing a moon or two, and just going about your day. I think for that type of gaming, it's fantastic. And if you want to be patient, charge it here and there, or be near an outlet, you're going to be able to still have that experience. So just keep that in mind as well. I think they're fantastic devices, but I think they're also a niche. So in conclusion, when it comes to whether you want to get the Lenovo Legion Go S, whether it be the Z1 Extreme, the Z2 Go, the Windows 11, or the Steam OS, all 4 versions are going to be solid devices. They're a newer version, but the Rog Ally X is still the tried and true It's just a matter of what you want to do. So we've gone over different case uses. We've looked at both devices. I think ergonomics-wise, we've talked about how the Lenovo is just going to have that better feel. The Rog Ally is going to have a slightly better battery. Performance-wise, they're very similar. Whether you get the V1 Extreme version, that's going to be basically the same across the board. And that Z2 Go is going to have a much better entry price. So if you want one specific thing over the other, that's going to basically put you in each direction depending on where you're going. So just keep in mind, there are other devices. We got the MSI Claw, which is another thing we didn't mention, solid device. We got the Steam Deck OLED, which for the visual type of element, you're going to want that. But it is older, it's going out of date, and we don't even have any updates on whether there will be a Steam Deck 2, but I'm sure it'll happen. So hopefully this helped you figure out what you want it to do or how you want it to go, because like me, I got both just so I could compare them and figure out what I wanted. So as a last thing, I did choose the Lenovo Legion Go S, the Z1 Extreme version, and I've returned the Rog Ally. For me, just the small features and functions, the feel, the size, everything just with what I wanted. The battery life was much less of an issue for me, and I've already ordered thumb grips to fix my one issue with thumb grips being slightly less quality in my mind. So you don't have to choose what I chose, but now you know. So for transparency's sake, that's my choice, and I hope I helped you make it. Alright, bye.
Guys, he's Bruce Wayne.
Oh!
He's Bruce Wayne. I found him, guys.